This is the Alter Rebbe's seminal work on Hasidic philosophy, where he deals with the definitions of human beings as they relate. Problem.
Let me ask this question then.
Sure.
When you talk about righteousness, you're talking about as a Jew. You're not talking about righteousness.
No, I'm not talking about American. No, I'm not talking about the American standard of righteousness. A guy's a good guy, pays his taxes, cleans his lawn, throws out his garbage, and then he does. No. It matters only vis-a-vis what it matters to the Torah. If the Torah says you have to be a good neighbor, you have to be a good neighbor. But what we're thinking about now is who sets the standards is not Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, but the Torah sets the standards of what we say is a good person.
I guess that's why it went down a notch.
Why? Okay. I don't want anyone to get down yet. No, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Once we go through 5 chapters, we'll feel like nothings. That's it. It's just like in an army, they're going to break you down to feel like you're a maggot, you're a nothing. Then afterwards, we're going to pick you up and we're going to make you all angels. Okay? That's it.
You can't get intimidated by anything.
Oh.
And I think that's where you lower yourself. You shouldn't do that.
Never. You see, because there's conflicting. There's conflicting.
It's the way you make it. It's a choice.
Yeah.
You see, we started. Okay, we ready?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, today we're going to start. We're still in the middle of the first chapter of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe is discussing today the 5 levels of levels of human dignity, or of human observance. We talk about the first 2 highest levels of the righteous person, and the righteous, which is good for him, means that he has absolutely no will to do anything wrong. He has basically killed all of his evil inclinations. The second level of a righteous person is one who is still righteous, only does good things, but still has within themselves slumbering. It's what's called, it's latent, it's laying there, and it hasn't yet been completely dissolved. So there is the possibility of one day this evil inclination rising up again. But what he's able to do is he's able to squash it, to repel it, to go down. So it's dormant. It's like a dormant gene that's laying there. You never know when. Maybe one day it will rise, maybe one day it won't rise. That's the other 2 levels are the other extremes. One is talking about the evil guy who just has no redeeming factors to him. He's absolute evil. And we've known people like this. I mean, you talk about a Hitler, you talk about a guy like Stalin. I mean, these guys are just absolute evil that have no redeeming values to them. I mean, they just got rid of all of the goodness within inside of them. I mean, now that doesn't mean that Hitler maybe fed his dog. He might have been nice to his dog. He was very fond of dogs. But that doesn't mean anything. I mean, the guy was absolute pure evil. I mean, anybody that can kill more than 10 million people falls into that category. Between 5 and 10, okay, maybe not. No, but 10 million, over 10 million for sure, you're in the category of a Rasha Viraloi. Then there's the Rasha, then there's the evil person, but every once in a while, something like flares up that he does a good deed. He's a kind of a benevolent, wicked person. Every once in a while he'll do a good deed. Now he's still going to be a wicked person. But now he has some good within him. And then there's the intermediate person. Then there's the people that are just do 50-50. They're okay. They're just the average person. So we're really interested in that level of a person, because we're not going to go to the extremes. The book is called the Sefer Shalbeinim, the book of the intermediaries, because that's really what we're interested in. How can we, as an individual, elevate ourselves to this intermediate level? Now, I want to give you one more little bit of an introduction to the Tanya, just a general sense of what's going on. The Alter Rebbe is of the opinion that how are we going to reach the highest level of where we can go? That's really what we're all about. As human beings, we want to go to the highest level. So if you're like a hockey player, you want to make it to the NHL. If you're a scholar, you want to make it to Harvard, to Yale. If you're this, you want to get to the best. As a Jew, you want to be able to come to the level where you're doing everything properly. How do you do that? Because we talked about that there's great challenges to Judaism, because the outside world is not always is sometimes conflicted to our ideals and our morals and ethics. So how do we do that? So the answer is is that the Alter Rebbe believes wholeheartedly through knowledge will set you free. If you know all of the players and you know everything, the makeup of what's going on, and you really know it, then you'll be able to overcome all of the obstacles. If it's just on faith alone, just every day waking up and just saying, no, I'm going to do it, 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 it's not going to work. It's not going to work, because eventually all of this passion that we have within inside of ourselves, all of this drive is going to fall by the wayside, because it's such a hard mountain to climb. You need some extra help. What is that extra help? That extra help is called Chabad. Chabad. And Chabad is an acronym for 3 Hebrew words: Chochmah, Bina, and Das. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And the way the Alter Rebbe is going to interpret it is the Chabad, the wisdom is, what is wisdom? What is really Chochmah? Chochmah is the first spark of an intellectual idea that comes to your head. Like, you're sitting there and you're, all of a sudden, boom, you start thinking of an idea. Now, you haven't thought about all of the ramifications, all of the details of it. It's just in its very, very unborn form, unborn state. But that's what we call chokhmah, that's what we call wisdom. I tell you, 1 + 1 is 2. So when you think about that, so 2 + 2 is 4. But you don't think of all of the ramifications, you just think about possibilities. That gives birth to Bina. Bina is understanding, where what you do with Bina is now you take all of the Chokhmah, all of the wisdom, and you start to massage it. You start to say to yourself, okay, let's think about this idea. What are some of the details? How do I get to the end result? This is already giving now form to the idea. Right? Now you're it's not only stays up there, but now it's already, all the details are coming through. We have some objections to the idea. Maybe it's not so. You're beginning to think about more. It's more now understanding. And then the last part is the das. Now once you have already the das, the knowledge, that's already implementation into our daily lives. So take a concept such as mathematics. So 2 + 2 is 4. Starts off with an idea. You think about it. Then you come into understanding what exactly that is. Then you eliminate all the other possibilities. Could 2 + 2 be 5? No. Could 2 + 2 be 3? Also not. You understand now clearly it's a given that 2 + 2 is 4. And you know that with complete certainty. Then you could then take that and implement it into our daily lives. So when your wife tells you, go and get me 4 fruit, and there's 2 apples and there's 2 oranges, you will know that you add the 2 apples and the 2 oranges, you've accomplished something, and you have now 4 pieces of fruit, and you could go home knowing full well that you won't have to go back to the store, which happens 85% of the time because the instructions weren't well given. All right? So here you have a case of where you took an idea, massaged it, gave it form, understood it, and then you implemented it into actuality, into the world. That's the same thing that we're going to do now with the Tanya. We're going to talk about certain things, such as the soul, which is an idea. What is a neshama? But we're actually going to give it clothing, we're going to massage it, we're going to expand on the idea of what a soul is. And then the last part of it is going to be when we actually implement all of those ideas into our daily lives to make us better people, make us kinder, more compassionate, more tolerant, a little bit more observant, etc., etc. That's really the entire layout of the Tanya. Now, the only caveat is when we talk about things such as mathematics and pieces of fruit, they're tangible. You see, you can grab an orange, you can grab 2 oranges and 2 apples, and you have yourself 4. You see it in front of your eyes, you smell it, you feel it. All of the senses parlay into that thing. When we talk about a soul, how are we going to prove that there's such a thing exists? Is anybody here going to come with show and tell next week and bring their soul? No, that's not going to happen, right? Because maybe in Yishka we talk about our souls, but we have to have a leap of faith. You're going to have to trust me and believe that a soul exists. That's the key here. Once you have that faith and you believe, then we can go on to the next step. Then we can go on to the understanding and to the knowledge. But in the beginning, let's start setting up the parameters. Okay? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I want to make sure that nothing. Okay. So he says like this. Okay. Then we say like this. So we pick it up in the beginning. I want to start from here. We pick it up. You see where it says, in the wicked, zevazeh shoiftan. But wicked people, beinonim zevazeh shoiftan. I think that's what we got last time. Intermediate people both make the decisions, right? Both make the decisions. It's on the top of if you're going to follow along in the English, it's on page 1, the right-hand side where it says Rabba declared. You see what that is? On top of the page. Then he says like this, Amar Rabba, so Rabba said, Kegon ana beinani. I, for example, am a beinani. Now who was this Rabba? Rabba was one of the authors of the Talmud. Not only one of the authors of the Talmud, one of the major authors of the Talmud, of the Gemara. He lived post-temple time. Means he lived after the temple was destroyed. Okay, there was no more temple around. So he said, Kegon, he gave an example, Kegon ani beinani. I'm like a beinani. Amar Abaye, Amar le Abaye, so Abaye said to him, Abaye was his most famous student, he said to him, Master, you do not make it possible for anyone to live. Why is that so? Because if Rabba is a Beinani, and we know that Rabba is a much higher level than we are, what does that put us into? What are we? Wicked, right? We're all in the level of Rishayim. Take if Rabba, just think about this, if Rabba is a Beinani, and we know that Rabba was a kind of a person that was, what it says over here, let's continue just for 1 second. No, and he says this, so he says, he was a kind of a person that never sinned, Rabba. Rabba was constantly studying Torah. He was a great person. If he's a Beinani, if he's an intermediate person, what does it make all of us? A Rasha. Right? A Rasha. And a Rasha, we concluded, is what? Is wicked. And it says a Rasha chashav kemes. The Talmud says a wicked person is like a dead person. So Abaye says to him, Abaye says, if you're the Beinani, what does it? You don't let anybody else live. How could you be a Beinani? That means everybody else in the world is dead. Doesn't make any sense. How could he be a Beinani? Then the Alter Rebbe asks another question. He says, Ulahavin kol zeh, to understand all of these questions that we talked about, ber heitev, with more explanation, v'gam lahavin masha amar Eiv, and also to explain what Eiv, you know who Eiv is? Job. You ever read the book of Job? Has anybody ever read the book of Job here in its entirety? Job is literally a study in faith. It's about a guy who had everything going for him in the world. Everything was going his way. Then one day, the Satan shows up and he tells God, well, you know what, this is a big shot, Eiv. Eiv it believes in you and he has faith in you because everything is going his way. Why don't we test him? See? So God says, okay, test him, but don't kill him. The only thing that you can't do to him is kill him. So what he does is, first of all, the guy loses his livelihood, all of his cattle. Then his children pass away. Then he himself is stricken with illness. And all the while, Satan is going to prove that, watch, he's going to blaspheme God. He's going to say, God, you're no good. Why did you do this to me? And Job, throughout the entire story, and 3 friends come to visit him, to comfort him on all of this loss. I mean, imagine just a short period of time, you become poor, childless, and ill. But Job doesn't give up his faith. Job sticks to his faith, and eventually everything that he lost comes back to him. I mean, he has a new family, and he has riches, and everything that he lost comes back to him. It's a real study of faith, one of the most interesting and yet puzzling books in the Tanakh, because you could imagine here's a man that lost everything, and his friends are encouraging him to give up the faith. And he's there's a time when he's a little, he's walking a fine line, but ultimately he stays strong.
But
okay?
the punishment is worse than death.
Yeah. No, but the punishment was not worse. This was a test. Now, many people in the Talmud feel that Job was only an allegory. It wasn't really a story. There was no such person called Job. There was never anybody called Eiv. It was just a story that was written. A story that was written to give us some kind of an understanding into this whole idea of test and faith. Because you don't have to be a Job to be tested, right? I mean, a lot of people have tests in faith. A lot of people. Job just as the example in the Tanakh. Okay, so he says like this. He says, Rabbeinu Shalom, you in heaven, part of it he says like this, Barasa tzadikim, barasa rishayim. You have created righteous people, you have created wicked people. But what's wrong with that statement? It's wrong. He's wrong. God has not created righteous people and wicked people. No, he hasn't. V'ha rasha v'tzadik loika amar. It is not preordained for someone to be righteous or to be wicked, right? If you say, God, you have created righteous and wicked people, what does that mean? That it's already been preordained that you're either going to be righteous or that you're going to be wicked. It's not so. So what did Job mean when he said, you have created righteous people and you've created wicked people? We need to understand what that statement is all about. Because we believe wholeheartedly in the whole idea of what? Free choice. If we do not have free choice, then everything else falls by the wayside. Then it doesn't matter anything. How could God expect you to be a good person? If everything is preordained, then we have no choice. It doesn't mean anything. God knows that you're not going to keep the Torah. God knows you're not going to be good. So no. So what happens is that the Maimonides writes in the 13 principles of faith that we believe wholeheartedly in the whole idea of Pechira Chavshis, in whole absolute free will. That means you cannot come back to say, you know what, God, I would have been good if you would have made me good. If I wasn't such a chazer for money and just wanted money and just loved money, then I probably would be more of a charitable guy. But because you gave me this personality trait that I just grab whatever I possibly can and I love money so much, what do you want from me, God? You want me to be a more charitable guy? Create me that way. I would have been a more charitable person. Is that an excuse in the eyes of the law? No. It's not an excuse. Even take something which is much more grievous, right? Alcoholism. Now, alcoholism is great debate going on, about what exactly is alcoholism. Is it is it a disease? Is it if you're an alcoholic, are you born an alcoholic? Is there a gene within alcoholics that you could see? Now, an alcoholic could come before God and say, what do you want from me? You don't like the fact that I'm an alcoholic? Well, why did you give me this gene? Why did you put me in this position? Why was I born to parents who love to drink? My mother was an alcoholic. Now, the alcoholic might have an excellent, because, people that have this personality trait that they're addictive personalities, and it's not only to alcoholism. It's food, it's to drugs, it's to sex, it's to gambling. You have a number of different things that people have this addictive personality. So the person says, what do you want from me? I would have been much better off if I would not have had an addictive personality. So God says, no, that's no excuse. I don't care. Yes, there are people that just don't care. They're not warm-blooded creatures. Let's say they're cold-blooded creatures, and this whole idea of intimacy doesn't do much for them. So they don't have any of this. They don't fall into this category of lustful people. They don't transgress on this one of the cardinal sins called lust, or want to commit adultery, because they're just cold-hearted. It doesn't turn them on. Okay, that person is lucky. But what if someone has this trait that they love it? I know, and they think about it all day, like most men, like 4 times every minute. They think about it. Then it's much harder, right? Then you come before God. You say, "What do you want from me? You want me not to commit adultery? You don't want me to think about women? You should have given me a personality that's cold." That's too low. Bob says that's too low. He says he wants to argue it 6 times a minute. Is that what that? Oh no! So all of that stuff, or gambling. Guys gamble away their whole life. Oy vey. Yeah, no. Okay. You know what? People gamble away. So if you go to a nice little penny choir practice, like we have in our shul, a little, okay, nicht gefährlich. But then, people go to Vegas. They lose, not only, they lose all of everything. They lose their mortgage money, their children's tuition fund, they lose all of these things. I come before God. What do you want from me? This is the kind of personality you made me. It's no excuse. Now, some people...
God isn't here to me for you to be able to say to him, well, you did all this.
Well, no, we're talking about after you actually come into contact with God. Yeah. You come after 120 years and he says, look what you did in the world. You gambled.
What God is there for, to make you a non-alcoholic.
No, but if you know something, anything about the 12-step program, The first thing they tell about this 12-step program is you have to put your life in the hands of a higher being. You have to believe in some higher being. You cannot fight this disease by yourself. Why? Because if you're not an addictive personality, you'll never be able to know what it means like. If you're not an alcoholic, you don't understand what an alcoholic goes through. I think to myself, you know what? I give him 2 smacks on the head, and say, get up and stop taking the drink. Oh, easy for you to say, Rabbi, because you don't like alcohol, right? But what about smoking? I remember when I smoked and I wanted to quit. I started. A guy should have come to me, give me 2 smacks across the head and say, quit smoking. Okay, so finally I did it. It was murder. But you can't even compare smoking to alcoholism. It's completely different. It's a completely different, there's Diet Coke. If you asked me to give up Diet Coke, it would be very, I'm not so happy. I would not talk to you anymore. Forget about it. Forget about it. So in these cases, sure, this personality trait makes it a lot harder. Just like in class, there are certain children that have a propensity to sit quietly. You come into a class, there's some naturally quiet, respectful children. Now, I know that in their home they've learned it, but by nature, they just sit there, they're quiet, they don't want to be. Then there's the guy like this. He has shmilkas in his toches, right? He can't sit for 2 seconds. And as soon as the class starts, his hand is up. Can I go to the bathroom? I need to sharpen my pencil. Can I get an eraser? I forgot my books. My paper fell down. I got to go out. My coat, I'm missing my coat. My pen doesn't have any ink. You know what? This guy has no shmilkas. Now, so what you have to say to this kid is you got to try harder. Today we have what is called Ritalin. For these kids. In the olden days, they kicked you in the tuchus and said, you better sit down with no Ritalin. Today, you have Ritalin and all different kinds of medication to deal with these personality things. Same thing is true about alcoholism. But even in alcoholism, they tell you the first thing is in AA, give your life up to a higher being. Give your life up. Understand that you're not alone in this war. And that's very important to understand. Because if we feel like we're out there just by ourselves, the job is too big. It's way, way too big. It needs to have Hashem helping us along. And that's why we ask for Hashem's help all the way through. What is one of the first things we say in the Amidah? We pray every day and we ask God for wisdom. Ask God for wisdom. You're either a wise person or you're not a wise person. It's not so. We need to have the wisdom to be able to distinguish like those fights that we should fight. Right? Because I got 5 issues I have with my teenage son. He doesn't put away his clothes, he doesn't bathe enough, he drives too fast, he smokes, and who knows what else. He doesn't study enough.
He's normal.
Okay. What? He's normal. I'm saying, but now I have to have the wisdom to know where I'm going to challenge him on. So what's my priority? So that I could challenge him on and he leaves his underwear in the living room. Okay? And I make that my marginal line that I'm going to cross over. So does that make any sense? I'm going to fight with him on the underwear and I'm going to forget about his studies. Driving, that's where I should be putting that's where I should be putting my effort in. Study hard, you'll get a career. With a career, you'll better yourself. Drive slowly, because if you drive fast, God knows. But you know what? I mean, worrying about his underwear in the living room, that should be after I clean up everything else. I'll worry about his underwear in the living room.
You don't pick it up, honey.
Okay, so you have to know who should fight which war. To fight which war. I want him to study more, and then his mother wants him to eat more, to sleep more. I say sleep less. His mother says no, sleep more. But I'm talking theoretically, I'm not personally. But there you have to know. You have to be wise to be able to distinguish where you're gonna shoot your bullets. You got one bullet. You have to make it. You have to make it hit. What? It's your priorities. It's your priorities.
Yeah.
But you know what we are? We're short-sighted. We only see what's in front of our nose at that exact moment. So at that exact moment, my son comes in and he goes to the refrigerator, he opens up, and the orange juice, and he goes, I look at them, I say to myself, okay, here's where a war starts. Here's where World War III is going to start, because a chutzpah, how do you drink the orange juice out of the container without putting it into the thing? Or, okay, he takes the orange juice, pours it already into a glass, drinks the glass, and puts the glass on the counter. And Maya said to him, you know what, I didn't know that the cup has legs. How's it going to walk from here into the sink? What? You see, there you go. So I'm saying,
I have no maid.
No, I'm just thinking theoretically of what could happen. My kids never do that. My kids are angels. They do whatever is absolutely correct. But here's you have to know, seichel-wise, you have to know where to start the war and where you're going to let things grind. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you start picking on every little nit thingy, then the major things are going to fall by the wayside. They're going to fall by the wayside. And that's true about wisdom, about understanding
Psychology.
Exactly, understanding where we are and who we are and how we benefit in life to get along. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us now in this. So we know we've come to the conclusion that we all have free choice. We all have free choice. All of us are going to go up there to heaven after 120 years. We're going to stand in front of the heavenly tribunal, and Hashem is going to say, "Why weren't you A, B, C, and D?" Well, I wasn't rich enough. But you know what? That's not an excuse, because Hillel was poorer than you. Then you're going to come and you're going to say, "Oh, I was too rich. If I had so much money, I didn't have time to study Torah because I was busy working with all of my businesses." So Hashem says, "No, King Solomon was richer than you, and he still had time to study Torah." Then you're going to say, "No. Look how handsome I am. Look me, I'm Brad Pitt. I'm so handsome. And all the ladies were chasing me. I didn't have time to study Torah." So he's going to say, "No, Joseph was handsomer than you. You know, Joseph was the handsomest guy. Yefas Toyar, he was such a handsome, and he still had time to study Torah and do everything, so you have no excuse." Then you're going to come in and you say, "Oh, I was so smart. I'm Albert Einstein." So Hashem is going to say, "No, Moses was smarter than you, and still he had time to study Torah." So all the excuses were whacked out, up in heaven. It's all up to us if we understand what we're doing. Okay. So now we go on and we're going to say like this. We've talked about 5 levels of nature, right? 5 levels of human nature. 2 in the tzaddik, 2 righteous, 2 wicked, 1 individual. But the question the Alter Rebbe is now going to ask, the next little piece is going to be, there's 2 parts to a person. One is descriptive and 1 is essential. What are the 2? 1, I talk about who you really are. What is deep down in your guts. We're describing you, what's deep down in your guts. The second, I say, is only a description of who you are. Like I say, you're an American. What does that really say about us? Not much, really. It means say that we're not British, we're not Danes, we're not Iraqi, we're not Israeli. We're Americans, fine, but it doesn't really say much about us. The person, when you talk about a person's essence, I mean, the person is kind, the person is a good person, the person is a caring, wise individual that already is starting to influence of who we really are deep down in our kishkis. Or you say the person is mean, the person is cruel, the person doesn't care about anybody else, the person is thrifty. All of those things are really not descriptive, but they're essential of what we are. The person's a soulful person. By saying the person's a musician, what have we said? We haven't really said much. We just described him that he's not a plumber, right? He's not a plumber. So he's a musician compared to, we have a plumber, a musician, and a fireman. How are we going to describe them? You have a musician. That is something just as a superficial description. Doesn't tell us if the person is good. Is he trustworthy? A guy came to me for a loan, and I ask you, Susan, is the guy trustworthy? You tell me he's a musician. What does that say about that? That doesn't help me in making my decision whether I should lend him. It means he's poor. Yeah, exactly. I shouldn't give him the money. Okay, there you go. You see, it's very good. Better he should be a doctor. Then I certainly would lend him the money, right? Some musicians are rich. But here's where the Alter Rebbe is going to divide the description of a Beinoni into 2 parts. One is going to be where as we all think of a Beinoni, the intermediate person, as a descriptive sense, meaning when I say, you know what, Rivka, she's 50-50. Not that she is 50-50, Rivka's a tzaddikus, but I'm just using her because I'm just saying that, you know what, she's 50-50. So what do we mean by that when I say she's an intermediate person in a descriptive level? Meaning that she's 50-50. She's, she does. She's a good person, but every once in a while she slides. She's a normal person, quote unquote, normal person. Someone that does more good than bad, we would call a tzaddik, right? This person's but does he always do good? No. Every once in a while he slips, but overall he's a good guy. Someone that does more bad deeds than good deeds, we would call an evil person. those guys conflict us. I always got conflicted with the movie The Godfather, right? If you saw the movie The Godfather, it portrayed the Godfather in a positive light, right? Because he was a good father. His grandchildren, he played with his grandchildren. It showed him that sort of human. He was kind of a human guy, and he even had some good traits to him. Because among the Ganavim, among the hoodlums, there was not honesty, but there was some kind of what? Honor among thieves. Honor. There was honor among thieves. Okay, you don't steal in my territory, I won't steal in your territory. And it showed him. So here's a guy that really what he was doing was horrible, right? I mean, he could kill people. He could kill people like no problem. He could steal. When it came to drugs, no, he drew the line. No, he wasn't going to sell any drugs. But anything besides that, prostitution, gambling, all of that stuff, hijacking, that's okay. But drugs, murder, but everything else, no. But drugs, no. So it was conflicting because the movie tried to portray him in a very human light. Okay? That's
What was he?
What? Well, he was a kind guy, a grandfather.
In the middle, what was
We would have to call him as a Russia. We would have to call him a Russia. We would have to call him a wicked person because ultimately his acts were evil. He killed people, right? And as much as he gave charity and he helped out this guy, and this guy had a problem with immigration and he helped him, and this guy had a problem, and this guy's girl's boyfriend, he had the guy beaten up, so he did acts of kindness, but ultimately his job was to kill people. I mean, this is what the whole organization was based upon. So the Alter Rebbe now is going to divide what is popular descriptions of people versus what the essential is. So the popular description is, I would say, okay, you know what? We're all Beinim. We're all intermediate people. We do things but then on the other hand, we could be short, we could be curt, we could get angry. All of these traits that we're not proud of. Because if we did an exercise, I would say, okay, everybody turn over the page. No, I'm not saying to do that. But I'm saying if I want to do, everybody turn over the page, take a pen, and I want you to write on the right side all the good deeds you did today, all the mitzvahs you did today. Think about what you did this morning. Did you call a friend in need? Did you do something? Did you say good morning to the newspaper boy that came by? Were you kind to the checkout lady that scanned your things? Think of all of the good things you did and write them down on the right hand side. Then think of all of the bad things you did today. What did you say when your daughter called you and she said, "Oh yeah," she started complaining? Were you compassionate or were you angry? What did you do when at the checkout counter when the lady with 14 items in the 10 well, I don't know why I pick on the lady. I always give this example with a lady, but 10 limit, and the lady comes in and she's standing there, and you have 2 items, and she has 16 items, and it says clearly express line 10 limit, and she has 14 items, and I'm counting them, and my blood is boom, 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 boom. I feel my heart is going to jump out of my shirt, and then she has the chutzpah she has of paying by check, okay? When it says only credit card cash. And this guy, this young schnook that's manning the booth, he's not saying anything to her. I'm standing there with my 2 items, I'm getting nervous. And she writes a check, then she asks him who to make it out to, then he has to verify it, then he has to call a cashier, then she has coupons, and then when a coupon is expired, then she's fighting about the expiration date, because maybe a leap year, and she didn't know, and then there's items that she didn't get, and then and I'm sitting over there, and I have to get to the class, it's almost 12 o'clock already over here, and I'm rushing, and she's over there debating what the guy thinks about yesterday's Bush speech, and this. So how did I react? Did I react with kindness? Did I act with compassion? Did I act with justice? Because you know what? Not always being a sucker helps. I mean, you stand over there and you're just like da 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 da, and she's blabbling along and talking, and you just sit there and you're fuming. Doesn't mean that you're a tzaddik. It could mean that you're a sucker, right? It just means that you're a sucker. So sometimes you must speak up for your rights because justice is justice, right? What's right is right. So you have to write down on your column all the good things and all the bad things. Now, I guarantee you, I will bet $1,000 that everybody will have something to write on each column. There's no question about it. You'll have some good things you did today. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying that. You're saying I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you will have enough to write things on both columns, right? So now I say to you, okay, let's take a look. Please hand in your sheets. Don't tell me your names. Don't write your name on the sheets. Just put a number, okay, so you'll know who you are. Okay, so number one had 27 good deals on the right hand side and 3 on the left hand side. Oh, this is a very good person, right? I mean, she's nice, she's kind, she's compassionate, she cares about people, she prays, she's devotional, she's faithful. Okay, so you know what? She curses. She said 3 curses, so you can't be perfect, right? So she said 3 times she used a curse word, and she wrote it down. Fine, okay. Next, number 2. What? Oh, wait. So we're going to get to that. No, not yet. She's not a tzaddik yet. Okay. Then we have. You can't be a tzaddik if you're cursing. That's for sure. If you're going to have a mouth like a sailor, you can't be a tzaddik. No, you can't be a tzaddik. A tzaddik has got to be completely on the left side is blank. If you have anything on the left side, you're with us. The other person is exactly the opposite. That's 27 things down here. The person, he swears, he was curt, he got angry today. Everything was bad. And on the right side, he had 3 good things. Okay, so what do we say about this person? He's also a Beinani. Means he has some good, he has some bad. That's a general descriptive form of a Beinani. Just judging by the person's actions. But that really is not an essential. It doesn't tell us what the person is like, right? It doesn't tell us if it's a good person. If I look at your actions, it doesn't tell me what the essence of a person really is. It just tells me how the person acts, what they are inside, or how much they struggle with themselves to overcome. You see, there could be some people that I look at them and I say, you know what? Look at this Chazer. Number 7 has 15 on the left side and 4 on the right side. At first glance, I would say this person's a no good person. I don't want to hang around them. Most of the deeds they do are no good. They're angry, they're arrogant, they're gluttonous, they're cheap. Who wants to hang around these people? I need people that will pick up the check for dinner every once in a while. You know what I mean? All of that stuff. But that person could be working on themselves. It could be that person is struggling within themselves to better themselves. Just by the actions itself, it doesn't tell us what the person's inside is all about. And you could have a person that's exactly the opposite, has 15 on the right side and 3 on the left side, and you say, you know what, that person is very complacent. You know why? Because they're naturally good people, just like I told you in school, right? There's in school a kid that sits like this, with this pen. Now they don't even have a pen anymore. Now you have a computer. So he sits like this, and everything the teacher says he's writing down, and he's getting on a disc, and then he goes home and he does his homework, and it comes with a loose leaf binders, like this. And then there's the kid who's he's sitting like this, and the teacher. Now the test comes. One gets a 92 and one gets a 91. Okay, who scored higher? The 92, right? And the first kind, the kid who sat there taking his notes got a 92. The jumpity kid got a 91. Okay, so I have to give the kid who sits nicely a higher grade. Who gets more effort? Who gets an A for effort? Who did more to achieve this grade? The kid with the 91. Because you know what? After school he had to go home, and his first inclination was to run and play soccer because he had so much energy. No, but he didn't do that. He went home, he cracked open the Talmud, he sat there with a dictionary, he called one of his friends, and all the time he's thinking about, God, I wish I could be on the soccer field, right? But no, he didn't. He studied, he worked hard. The other guy came home, cracked open the Talmud, sat like this, read the Talmud, and took his test and got a 92. So if we just looked at the marks themselves, we'd have to say who's better? The 92. He's better. Who tries harder? Who's working on themselves more? And even more. Forget about it. One got 92 and one got 71. Okay? The jumpity kid got 71. I'd still give him a better mark for effort because he busted himself. He went ahead and he was hard for him because naturally he doesn't have that kind of an inclination. I met a doctor once who was ADD. I said, ADD? I said, how did you get through medical school with all of the reading and all of the memorization? How could you possibly be ADD and go through medical school? He said, you know what? He sat literally night after night after night rereading it and rereading paragraph. It was murder for him. It was literally hell for him in medical school. But he did it. He wanted to show the world that he could do it, and now he's an expert on ADD. He became a psychiatrist, and he deals with children with ADD because he can relate to them. because he did it, and he's been there and done that, and all of those things. So therefore, I'm only bringing this up to show you that actions, even though they're extremely important, and normally we judge a person by the actions, because we see, is the guy a giver to the shul or guy not a giver to the shul? Is he writing the check or not writing the check? That's all I care about. I care about the struggle that goes on inside of the guy. The bank wants to get paid its mortgage this month. The shul needs to pay the bills. Do I care if you sit up at night till 3 o'clock in the morning wrangling with yourself whether you should write the check or whether you have arm paralysis that you can't get the pen to the paper? Someone has to sit there literally and putting it. I don't care, and the bank doesn't care. Also, ultimately, we're judged on our actions, But really, what the person is the struggle. So someone who writes $100 check, he's a cheap son of a gun, writes $100 check, and he gives it, grabbing it out of his hand. He's still holding on to it, and finally he lets go. Okay, then there's the other person who writes a $500 check and he gives it like this. Sure, the $500 is the bigger giver, and he gets the bigger applause. But the effort of the guy who wrote the $100 check, because he's so cheap in himself and he loves money so much, it was a bigger struggle than the guy who gave the $500. Because there's some people that are just naturally charitable. I mean, it's embarrassing. They just write the money and just to give it, and not a hand. Other people is, you got to be like a dentist. It's like extraction. It's like a tooth extraction. You got to sit there. You got to sit on their hands. You got to get the checkbook out for them. But the person that struggles harder, it means more to them. I mean, it means it's they're working on themselves, and that's really what the Alter Rebbe is really going to now separate. So I just wanted to give an introduction into the next piece because it's going to be a little bit tricky.
You're talking about The Godfather. I don't remember the movie as well as you.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
But, he's Jewish. He was...
No, he criticized the Jews.
He was Italian.
Yeah. Paisano.
Marlon Brando.
Okay, but now this... He was so he did how nice he was to this and how...
Yeah.
With the family.
But when a person has so much evil to do what he did,
right, there
can't be... I find it hard, this cover. He has a cover.
Yeah.
He's not really fighting with good and bad. He is making...
No, I agree with you. I'm not, I didn't justify The Godfather. I just brought him up to show that in the movie they try to portray him as human. Just like there's a whole
You can't portray someone like that as human.
Yeah, but you can't. I know, but this is Hollywood. I mean, they turn fantasy. So you know what? Then you have... Just like, for example, there's an understudy now of trying to understand Hitler. What is the purpose? Because if you understand Hitler, then you'll understand the evil, and this way we'll be able to combat it in the future. So they write books about his psychology, and what it was like, and how he treated women, and what it was like to animals. There's no understanding him. There's no understanding, like you said, pure evil. Pure evil must be dealt with in only one way. His face should come into contact with a bomb. That's the only way that you could deal with pure evil. That's it.
Instead of spending so much time on all this, we need to spend our time and money on education.
Exactly.
Spending time delving into something that has no redeeming value.
Yeah, but you know what? But see, here in America, forget about Hitler, but going back to The Godfather for a second, why was it such a popular movie? It's probably one of the 10 best movies of all time. If you ask people one of your best movies, they'll say it was The Godfather because it resonated. Somehow we are a crazy society, and that movie kind of resonated with us. We saw a family, we saw a father who does good things, and we saw a father that does not such good things. We saw a brother that gets very angry, and we saw a thoughtful brother that thinks things through. We saw a brother that's out of the family, and we saw within that world a relationship that we can understand. And he brought what Mario Puzo did, is he human, exactly. He brought that family into our lives, and the way they portrayed themselves was, hey, it's not much different. Well, we talk about taxes. You sit on the eve of the 14th thing. Okay, should I declare this? Should I not declare this? Should I make this decision? Should I not make this decision? And all of that stuff. So we could always integrate all of that thing, and that movie resonated with the American public. It just talked to them, and we could relate to a guy like Marlon Brando, even though we, like you said, we know in our heart of hearts, we know this guy's a bad guy. We know he's a bad, he's a bad person. But we in America love fantasy. Oh, do we love fantasy? We love thinking about movie stars. Why? Because they're good people. You know, like which one? Rita Hayworth or these old time actresses, beautiful actresses, like Ingrid Bergman, or all of these things. Greta Garbo. Why did we fantasize, about these women? Not because they were good people. They were probably, most of them were whacked, in the head. Right? Because they built a world that we don't know about, that we wanted to enter into that world, the world of glamour. I mean, who wouldn't like to live in that kind of a world? Every day wake up, be pampered. They always looked great. They never looked like your regular housewife, right? You wake up and you look at your wife, and she looks at you, the same way. Charlotte always points out that I know. Okay, you know what? You look at your wife after 35, 40 years of marriage, she's not the same as she looked when she was, what? 51? No, your husband says you look exactly the same.
No,
he says
51 years we're married.
That's what he says, and you haven't changed an iota, he says. That's what I'm saying. So you know what? So that world now becomes our world to escape, and we love that. We love the escapism part of the world. We love to go into a world that we don't know.
That's why during the Depression, people would go to the movies to escape.
Exactly right. Exactly 100% correct. And that's why we follow sports, and that's why we follow movie stars, and that's why we read newspapers and all of these magazines.
Because that's why there's such a small group here to hear these issues, when it's so much easier to hear the other end.
Well, come on. What would most people do? What if I gave everybody a choice? Okay, at 12 o'clock today, we're going to be studying the Tanya, and the Alter Rebbe is going to make us think and make us maybe even feel a little guilty for the things that we do because we're overeating, we're a little bit more gluttonous than we'd like to go. Or let's go out and party. Let's go out to the park and we'll have a barbecue. Now, come on. If I advertised one against the other, who's going to pick up the more people?
That's your job.
What?
Barbecue.
The barbecue? What? I thought that class. Okay. No, of course. Of course.
What a tremendous job you have that will never end. You better live to be 120.
That's what I say. I say we're never going out of business. Baruch Hashem. Religion will never go out of business because it confuses people so much that that it will always have customers. We'll always have customers. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about because if just on that point, because why is religion so important to people's lives? Because it's what we said before. Because people understand, and most people, that they're weak. Not that they're not good people. They're good people, but we are weak people. We are people that are not strong. A small wind comes and sways us. I mean, you just think about it. The moment you look what happens. Not in our shul, because our shul is only the finest, most refined, honorable people in our shul. Go to a regular Orthodox shul at the Kiddush. Notice what happens. As soon as the rabbi says, Amen, one second, exactly. Hold on 1 second. Let's just see let's follow what happened over here. 5 minutes ago, the poor rabbi was up there invoking and crying and pleading and begging for a little bit more morality, ethics, values. Look what the Torah, look what Abraham went through. He circumcised himself and all of this, and he extended himself to the visitors, even though he was feeling so sick. The angels came and to show how much we should care about other people and about taking guests into our house. And then we read the Torah and we're listening intently to the Torah, and then we daven Musaf, and everybody has the talis over their heads and we're shaking like there's no tomorrow. That lasts for 2 hours. Then we take off the talis, we greet everybody a good Shabbos, and as soon as we leave the shul and we go into the Kiddush room, there's a transformation like those toys. If you ever had grandchildren, Transformers, the Transformers, they came out recently. Maybe when my kids were small, you could take it looks like a truck, but it turns into a person. Then you take a person that turns into a bird. People transform. And now, all of a sudden, who was that guy? He had a long white beard, and he wrote the book called The Origin of the Species. What was his name? Rabbi Darwin. Rabbi Darwin. Wasn't he a rabbi? Because he wore a black hat, and he had a long white beard. He wasn't a rabbi? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought he was a rabbi. Oh, he wasn't. Oh, I thought his name was Darwinsky, but he changed it on Ellis Island. No, you sure? Okay. I thought he was a rabbi. Okay, nonetheless, I'm being facetious. But the thing is, you know what? He claims it's survival of the fittest. right? Species come out. Who's gonna survive? That's what happens to people out of shul. Now it's the survival of the fittest. We smell the cholent, and it's everybody on their own. It doesn't matter, grandparents against grandchildren, fathers against mothers, children against their parents. I'm going to get that piece of gefilte fish if it's the last thing on earth. You could think we're going to Auschwitz tomorrow, God forbid. The way people, what? I said in our shul they're behaving. I'm saying in our shul they're behaving.
I see the children. It's exactly like that.
Is it true?
It's true. It's 100% true.
How about
In
the
fact,
Orthodox? They
you
used
take
to.
their hands. They don't even take a utensil.
I saw one man create an extra long fork. It was about this long, so he doesn't even have to fight in the beginning. He could just put the fork over everybody and grab the gefilte fish, standing 4 rows back. He could pick it out. I mean, that was a comedian.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
was there humor when they wrote this, like you have?
No. The Alter Rebbe, I don't think, was a very humorous
The
guy.
whole spice of this is humor.
Yeah.
The spice of all this is humor.
Rabbi, how about
You know, the truth of the matter is, as you well know, as a World War II veteran that went through the the big one, that you have to have some humor in life to get over the bad things. Because what you've seen in life, and you know, and I just saw another book, and I don't want to get into this. You know, the Holocaust is where they took all the British when they liberated Bergen-Belsen, which was one of the death camps. You were in Bergen-Belsen. My mother was liberated. Fanny was liberated from Bergen-Belsen. And what they did was they took all of the people that lived around the cities of Bergen-Belsen, all the German, the mayor, the people, everything was in Germany, and they made them walk through the camp before they burned down the camp. Ultimately, they burned down Bergen-Belsen, all of the barracks. But they made them walk through and showed them exactly what was done. Now, you see that, and you think to yourself, Rabbeinu Shalom, there's no reason to live anymore. So you have to balance it, not with taking life not seriously, but you have to have some humanity into life, some humor into life, to be able to counterbalance all of the things that we see. I mean, you think about, go to children. If you're feeling too good one day, go to Children's Hospital in downtown LA. Then you won't be feeling that good so much. You won't be feeling that great anymore, because you'll come and you see little kids who are sick, mothers who have been there for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, a year, living in the hospital with their children. Doesn't feel so good. But you have to be able to balance all of this out.
But that's
The reality.
if you feel good, this is a good day to start working on things.
That's exactly.
You look at those things and you say,
absolutely.
That mother is sitting with that
absolutely.
child, she barely have time to go to the bathroom.
Absolutely.
But I have the time to do
Yeah, absolutely. I
That's
agree.
what I'm doing.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you 100%. And I think next week, when we're going to pick it up, actually, when we get into the descriptive and the various parts of really talking about the essential part of the Beinani, we'll see how it's going to start relating to us. The sad fact is, it's not a sad fact, but the reality is that we're human beings. And human beings will get excited, then we'll drop off, and then we'll get inspired. I mean, you know what? Usually the Shabbos after Yom Kippur is a big Shabbos in Shul. Usually more people are there than usual. Why? Because, they got inspired by the rabbi's words. They want to come. Then the next Shabbos, a little less. And, that's human nature. That's the way it works. That's why I say, let's wait before we get to a big room. I don't want to give an ayin hara, because I know how classes start. The first couple of classes, knowing they're standing wall to wall, then all of a sudden they start figuring to themselves, I'm going to have to change, or whatever it is. That's right. So, enough said. Dayenu.